Jake and Fulton coming to you on a Tuesday. We are inching closer to 5:30 on Thursday for Kansas State versus Michigan State. You can hear that right here on your home for Wildcat Athletics, 580 WIBW FM 104.9, 5:30 pregame coverage. We're going to talk plenty of hoops today with K-State and Michigan State. We will get into some Chiefs news. Patrick Mahomes liking some social media tweets. We'll get to that. What are the Chiefs going to do at wide receiver? They just signed a defensive lineman, a familiar face. We'll get to that. We'll talk a little baseball, little WBC tonight. We got a lot to get to. We're going to talk with Matt Derrick coming up at the bottom of the hour. Dan Lucero will stop by as well. So plenty to discuss on this Tuesday edition of Mic'd Up. Let us know your thoughts, 785-272-9429. That is very simple, very easy to check out. That is our text line. Let us know your thoughts on K-State versus Michigan State. Hit us up on YouTube. Check us out in the comments section. Go to youtube.com, search Sports on 580. Hit the subscribe button. Very easy. You'll get all the recaps and the videos that we will have for all things KU, K-State, Chiefs, Royals, all of that coming up on our YouTube page. But K-State fans, I want to know one thing. If K-State beats Michigan State and they make it to the Elite Eight, where would this year rank when it comes to K-State history? You got to get to the Elite Eight. This has been an absolute fantastic run. But I would be very interested to know where this one ranks if you get to the Elite Eight. And so, Fulton, I'm going to ask you this. You've been around for 2 national championships for KU. Mm-hmm. You've also been with a lot of different runs, to the final, the championship game in 2012.
Yeah.
You were not around, obviously, in 1988.
No.
But did you have more fun watching the Hawks in 2008, 2012, 2022? Because that, to me, is what a K-State fan is going to kind of put into perspective if they win. At 7:30 Thursday night, if K-State wins and they advance to the Elite Eight, they've gone to the Elite Eight a bunch, in the last 40 years, to be honest with you. They made the Elite Eight right now. This would be the 3rd time that K-State would make the Elite Eight if they win.
In the last, 5 years?
Well, no, it's since 2010 was the last time. So in 2018, you had the Barry Brown, Dean Wade get all the way to the Elite Eight. That team was an 8 seed. They played in the 8-9 matchup. Of course, they ended up beating Kentucky to go to the Elite Eight, and then they fell to Loyola. 2010, that was the Jacob Pullen year when they had that tremendous game when he was awesome against BYU and that just absolute thriller, one of the best basketball games I've ever seen against Xavier, and then they fell to Butler. But they both ended up in the Elite Eight. Neither team won the conference.
Nope.
They did not win the conference because the 2 times that K-State has won the conference in Big 12 play, they got bounced in the first round. So when
a weird, oddly specific thing that's happened also. Just a sidebar. Incredibly odd thing to happen.
So I remember how much fun it was in 2018 to have Dean Wade and Barry Brown and that group. And then 2010 to me, 2010 was a lot more fun for K-State fans because they were really good. They were a 2 seed. Jacob Pullen was in the zone. He was electric. And that was maybe more expected because of the success that they had previous leading up to 2010. And maybe that's why I put 2010 ahead of 2018 when it comes to how much fun it was watching that K-State team. But when you look at where this team could end up if they win Thursday, just where at would this season rank amongst the history of K-State hoops. You know, does it go up there with 1988, Mitch Richmond, and making that team going to the Elite Eight, and Mitch Richmond, Hall of Famer. I mean, that guy was an absolute machine. They lost to KU in 88 though. So I wonder if that the way that season ended maybe didn't have a little bit more sting to it. You know, losing to KU in the Elite Eight in 1988 versus losing to Butler doesn't have the same type of effect. Or do you go back to 1975 with Chucky Williams and Mike Evans? And this is predating my era, obviously, but I know people who were at Ahern Fieldhouse, and I even reached out to a couple of the older, you know, gray hairs out there who loved watching, you know, the Purple Pop Gun duo and Evans and Chucky Williams. And you go back to 72 with Lon Kruger, and I know all about that because, you know, Bob Chipman was on that team. I mean, the last time that K-State made the Final Four was in 1964, and the tournament was completely different.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
So I wonder just how special is this season going to be? One, because nobody saw this coming.
No.
Nobody did. I mean, we are talking brand new head coach, first-year head coach, 2 guys on the roster, and yet it all started with something very, very small, with Jerome Tang screaming at the top of his lungs saying it's a great day to be a Wildcat, and then just moving on the small things that he's done to connect with the student body. Just think, it seems like eons ago where Jerome Tang hopped up on a table and chastised the crowd and grabbed the microphone and started saying KSU, KSU. Like, honestly, that's more impressive than anything that Jerome Tang has done, has ended the chance.
Yeah, the greatest accomplishment.
It into something else.
I don't care what the season is with K-State. Jerome Tang's greatest accomplishment is he got the K-State fans to stop screaming the chant. That is the greatest accomplishment he has for maybe his entire career, forever it will be, and it would only be topped by winning by like 9 national titles. And because getting that K-State fan base to stop doing that, no one had done it. That's Herculean. But no, so I obviously am not intimately in the weeds with this fan base. I come from a much different fan base, one that's usually on the direct opposite of K-State fans. I'm a KU guy. To me, this should probably, if K-State takes this team to the Elite Eight, might be their greatest run since the turn of the millennia. Because, yeah, the 2010 run was great with Jacob Poland. You're supposed to get there, though. 2 seed, as great as Jacob Poland was, you kind of expected to make a deep run. You did.
Like, the expectations were you'd better not get bounced in the first round.
The expectations were you're getting to a Sweet 16. If you don't at least get there, you guys are losers and failures. And they did what they needed to do. They got to the Elite Eight and lost to a good Butler squad.
Losers and failures think a bit strong.
Yeah, but nonetheless, the point taken, they got where they needed to get to, where they were supposed to get to. You look at that team in the 2018 run. That team getting to the Elite Eight as an 8 was surprising, sure. But the path to get there, I think, does diminish it some. I mean, you got to the Sweet 16 by beating a 9 and a 16. And the thing is, though, they can't control that.
Exactly.
And I'm not trying.
But tread lightly there. And the reason why I'm going to say tread lightly is because I can say that last year about KU. Well, you know, that national title doesn't mean a whole lot because, you know, they played Creighton without Nemhard, without Kalkbrenner. You know, they able to play a Providence team who really wasn't that great. That's why I say tread lightly.
But here's my thing. I'm not trying to discredit what they did because of that.
Well, you kind of did.
I'm not trying to discredit it. I'm trying to frame it. Like, the accomplishment of getting to an Elite Eight is impressive because the amount of games you're winning in a row in a short span. Like, it is elevated when you play certain teams. It is not lowered. I'm not trying to lower how great that Elite Eight was. It is, though, not elevated because of who they went through. But you look into the context of this run to the Sweet 16. This team was projected to finish last in the conference. They had 2 dudes on this roster when Jerome Tang took the job. They were not a team, anything you could call a team, until like August.
You end up for a 3-on-3.
You did it.
3-on-3 match.
You were gonna have to ask dudes from the rec center to help you run practice. That's how, like, I don't want to use the phrase down bad, really, because that's not really what it was. Just that.
I probably would say they were down bad
because it was a transition period. That's what this team was, and yet here they are. They're knocking on the door of an Elite Eight.
And K-State fans, I want to hear your thoughts on it, because from an outside perspective, to me, I think this goes down as one of the 2 or 3 greatest seasons if they make it to the Elite Eight, if they're playing on Saturday. And I'll say this, if they make it to the Final Four, it's the greatest season in K-State history.
I will say this, I'm with you. If they make it to the Final Four with this team and the way that things started, like, because expectations, I think, also matter. Because that's my thing with the 2018 team as well. The run was great, but you were in an 8 seed with some good players, and there was a thought you could try to make a run. And I get that you're like, well, Fulton, this K-State team's a 3. Sure. But the 28 team had higher expectations when the regular season began. This team right now had no expectations. None. There's a reason they were projected to finish last. They had a guy who had never been a head coach at the D1 level. And as great as Jerome Tang is, as great as he is, and I've grown to love this man as a person and a coach, he didn't have, like, his bona fides were still good. He'd been an assistant for a turnaround of one of the greatest turnarounds as of late and won a national title. Like, he still had the bona fides, but he hadn't done it as the guy.
Correct.
So there's some question marks there. And to see what they've done with this team, if they made it to an Elite Eight, I think as where it stands, it's a top 5 season in K-State history. Right now, they could get blown out by Michigan State. We're still there. They make it to the Elite Eight, it's top 3. If they make a Final Four, I do not think there should be a debate on this is the greatest season in K-State history.
They were a national runner-up in 51, lost to Kentucky. They've been to 4 Final Fours, and they've been to a ton of Elite Eights. And the Sweet 16, they've been to, was it, I think, 17th most of all time. So that's why I look at this as just how exciting this can be from a K-State perspective, because during the year, and that's why I wanted them to win against Montana State more than anything, so that you have that validity of making it to the second round, and then you beat Kentucky. This is just, and that's why I think the amount of pride and everything, and this is why this right here shows you why K-State fans and Bruce Weber just didn't vibe, because they knew that this could end up happening.
They knew the goal should have been higher than what they were.
Yeah. From the text line, if they win it has to me the most incredible season in history, considering that only 2 players existed 10 months ago and a new head coaching coming on board. Even if they lose, it'll still be one of the best seasons. Also, from where we were after Bruce's last game to now is a different world, and the Lavender is officially back. Finally, people are on board with the Lavenders.
Yeah.
I've been team 2-tone Lavender for a while now. Also from the text line, define gray hair. I may take offense to that. Well, that's the thing is, outside of 2010 and 2018, the last good run for Kansas State was in 1988 when they made it to the Elite Eight, and then 1981. Like that was over 40 years ago. Like 1981
world,
is over 40 years ago. That's not just a generation, that's multiple generations. That's why what this team is doing right now is so much fun.
And then I think the other part of this, which is what makes this run, it elevates to a different level, is this team is so likable. I think that does influence how great runs can be. Like, it's one, because like the circumstances around your run are what can also elevate it from, what makes one Elite Eight run better than another, what makes one Sweet 16 run better than another, what makes a Sweet 16 run better than an Elite Eight run. It's the circumstances in which you got there, and it's the guys that are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, and I will again caveat with that I am coming from a very different side of the fence than others. This is probably the most likable group of Wildcats, top to bottom, staff to players, in a long time, at least for me. And I have nothing against Barry Brown and Dean Wade. I have nothing against those guys. They were fun. I'm happy that Dean Wade's succeeded in the NBA. Good for him. The likability, though, isn't, I think, to the level you can like a guy like Marquise or Keontae.
And that's why I look at, to me, 2008 will always be the most fun for me watching a KU or K-State team when they went on that national title because of all the guys that were there. Yeah. You had Mario, you had, Russell Robinson, Brandon Rush. You had Sharon Collins, and then you had the quirky Cole Aldrich shutting down Tyler Hansbrough. Like, to me, that was a more fun championship run than last year. That's just how, and maybe that's just that people love talking about, like, back in the day. Like, there are a lot of people who look at, like, Jalen Wilson as not a great Jayhawk, because it's in the moment where if you had the all three guys had the same credentials. Devontae Graham. That's why I asked you, Devontae Graham.
Devontae Franken.
Well, Frank's different because he was player of the year. But Devontae Graham, Ochai Agbaji, and Jalen Wilson, they're all the same. They all were first.
Their bona fides are all identical.
They're all the same. But yet, if I would ask the normal person, they're going to put Jalen Wilson last, and it's not even close. They're going to put Devontae Graham first, and it's not even close. But they're the same. All of their individual accolades are the same. Different team stuff, and then maybe that's why Ochai, helped lead his team to the title. Well, he had the best team out of everybody in that situation. So I look at this K-State group as, if they do win Thursday, this team will go down. And I think individually, as Marquise Noel, we're talking, if Marquise Noel is able to lead this team to an Elite Eight or to a Final Four, you're talking like K-State legend stuff.
Yeah. You really are.
Transfer was the key cog. Now, Keontae Johnson doesn't quite have that same, because he was a one-year guy. Yeah. Whereas last year, Marquise Noel was part of that team that was not very good, but he was one of the few bright spots. But what he has improved, that's the legacy aspect of it, with what Marquise Noel can do in just 2 games, because that's what we think about. Mario Chalmers, great KU basketball player. Great KU basketball player. The only reason he's hanging in the rafters is because he hit a shot that is the most iconic shot in KU history. That's the reason why. He was never a first-team All-American. I don't even think he was. I don't even know if he was honorable mention All-American. But it's what you do in March that matters, and this is what Marquise Noel can do. And he can put himself in the Jacob Pullen era or category for what he has done for this program, if they have to get to a certain spot. That's why I think this has been a blast to watch if you're a K-State fan. Let us know. Hit us up on our text line, 785-272-9429. Coming up next, the Chiefs re-sign a familiar face. Chiefs coming up in the 2:00 hour, but the Chiefs have signed familiar face Derrick Nottie. That's right.
He's back again.
He is. Derrick Nottie will be signing looks like a 1-year contract with the Chiefs. Here's the thing about this is more of a cheap depth position who is known. I don't see Nottie playing a whole lot.
No, his snap counts have gone down every year he's played with the Chiefs.
I just look at this as he knows the system. I would rather have a guy who's been in the league than maybe spend a little bit more money. I mean, he's almost going to cost you maybe $1 million, whatever the league minimum is. And it's just a depth piece. And you ready for this? He might not be on the team. Like this is just a cover your basis when you go into the draft,
which is a perfectly fine thing to have. Yeah,
maybe you find a Tershawn Wharton, if you will. So we'll talk more Chiefs in the 2:00 hour. But coming up next, Matt Derrick joins us to talk all things Chiefs football. to talk all things Chiefs with our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider. He is Matt Derrick. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick, ChiefsDigest.com. All right, Matt, before we get to the latest signing of Derrick Nottie, I got to go to the two signings over the weekend. Edwards, the safety out of Tampa Bay, heading to the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year, $3 million deal. And then Drew Tranquill, the linebacker from the Chargers. Let's first start with Edwards. I think this is fantastic. I love this signing. What do you think makes this signing a perfect fit for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think both these signings were really sneaky good signings, and Edwards in particular. I mean, you look at the Chiefs safety rotation, which we know. I mean, there's plenty of times the Chiefs like to use three safeties, so they're going to be able to get Edwards on the field along with Cook and with Reed. I think it's going to be for a really good trio. Edwards is very flexible. I think you can use him in a lot of different spots. I think he could spell both those guys, so I think you could move him around a little bit. I think it's a really good signing. Obviously, he's got championship experience too. He's been with a good team. I think there's a lot to like about it.
So he will be the third safety, right? It's Cook and Reed who are going to be the starting safeties.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Edwards wanted out and be out Cook for that role. The Chiefs have absolutely groomed him to be able to step in for Thornhill this year. So that's what I would expect. But like we've seen with the Chiefs rotation, I mean, Edwards is going to get plenty of playing time, and I think they're also willing to be able to use him on special teams too. And as a third safety, that's what you got to be able to do.
Are you surprised at how no one else was after him?
Yeah, I mean, both these players kind of fit into that. I thought there would be some teams that would be interested in both these guys as starters. And you look at the contracts, I mean, and they're very favorable deals. Part of it at safety, this was a very deep safety class. There was a lot of guys that got paid in this group. A lot of safeties changed hands. There was some money that was given out. And so at some point, you get to a line in the market where, everybody has spent their money at that position. Friday was really when you started to see the second wave kind of kick in, when you started to see some bargains. And I think the Chiefs did a really good job of kind of measuring the market there, letting other teams spend and kind of pick it over. And then they're able to kind of swoop in and grab a guy that really is starter quality, but you can kind of plug into the backup level.
Let's go to the signing of Drew Tranquill, and this is odd to me because you wouldn't think, the Chiefs need linebacker help. They've got three guys. They've got Bolton, you've got Willie Gay, and you've got Leo Chanel. And when they signed him, I was like, okay, maybe this is a multi-year deal. No, it's just a 1-year deal. Because maybe they're going to sign him to a 2-year deal because they won't bring back Willie Gay. Okay, that makes sense, but it's just a 1-year deal. And this is a guy who had, 130 tackles. He had 5 sacks, 10 tackles for. He was the green dot for the Chargers. Is this something that like the Chargers just didn't want anything to do with the defense last year, unless your names are Mack and Bosa and James, or why did he end up being a free agent, considering he had his best year for the Chargers last year? And if it only cost $3 million, how does he not? How do the Chargers not re-sign him?
Yeah, the $3 million kind of makes you think, okay, if you're the Chargers, why can't you get that deal done? But then you look at the Chargers and you look at their salary cap situation, and with the money that they've committed and some deals that they still have to get done, I mean, you're going to have to save some money somewhere. I mean, you're going to have to, instead of paying maybe a starting linebacker $3 million, you're probably going to have to pay league minimum or somebody you're going to draft. And hey, teams always know their own players better than everybody else. So clearly, hey, the Chargers were a lot like the Chiefs in a lot of ways. I mean, the Chiefs are letting some guys go that I'm sure some other teams are saying, like, wait a minute, why did the Chiefs bring this guy back? They got the money. Why couldn't they do that? But sometimes it is that kind of thing. A team knows the warts of its players maybe best of all. Maybe they have a little bit of blind spot. But I think the bigger thing for the Chargers was simply the salary cap decision. But Tranquill, I mean, this is for all the reasons you mentioned, should be an absolutely fantastic fit for the Chiefs. He could be the backup behind Nick Bolton. You don't have to plug in Leo Chanel there. He could play all three spots. And if you're talking about upgrading Darius Harris to Drew Tranquill, that's a huge upgrade to me.
You can never have enough depth, that's for sure. Does this mean that Bolton might not be on the field as much on third down? Because the one knock on Nick Bolton is he doesn't cover the pass well. Well, Drew Tranquil does that much better. That makes me almost say, hey, you know what? He becomes the green dot guy on third down, especially like third and long situations where you've got Tranquil and then Willie Gay on the court or on the field.
It's possible. I wouldn't rule that out. I think it's certainly more likely that, Tranquil could be a guy that could spell Nick Bolton, that maybe they would give him off, a drive here or two just to kind of, give him a rest. Normally with the green dot guys, I mean, they don't like to take those off the field, in the middle of drives unless they have to. So, but hey, every situation's different. And you're right. I mean, I do think they have different skill sets, so they do kind of mesh up a little bit differently. So you never know how things are going to play out that way. But to me, I mean, you have to, like you said, I mean, you can't have enough guys at the linebacker spot because every season you guys miss games for different reasons. And if now you're plugging in Drew Tranquil, who's get a few starts during the season or filling when somebody's down, that to me is just a tremendous upgrade.
Is this at all something to do with Leo Chanel? Do they think, okay, he's not that type of linebacker, that he's not an every down type of linebacker. He is a very specific skill set linebacker. And that's why they went out and they signed Drew Tranquil. I mean, this almost seems like a little bit of, a riches type of signing, but are they not as high on Leo Chanel maybe as what a lot of people would think?
I don't know if it's that as much as I think that they probably want to be able to take the time to let Leo Chanel focus on one position. And that's the one thing that this should be able to allow him to do. I mean, last year they really tried to work him in to give him a little bit of time at the mic so that he could essentially be a backup to Nick Bolton. This gives him more time for that. And I think that's valuable. I mean, being able to pick up both those spots and move back and forth is a pretty tough thing to do. So I think if you can give Chanel a little bit more time to prepare for that, I think that's a good thing. I mean, they'd still be obviously comfortable with him as their third guy who would be the green dot and call the defenses. But this just kind of gives you a little bit more prep, and it allows Chanel that if they do have an injury, if Nick Bolton had to leave, now you're not juggling up your defense completely. You can have Tranquil come in. You don't have to move Chanel around and then bring somebody else in, and now you're kind of downgrading two positions. Those are the kind of things that the GMs and the coaches look at. So I think this is maybe. I'm not sure if this was part of their plan. But I think it's certainly something that when they get to the second wave of free agency, you start looking at who's out there. This was just, I think, too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Matt Derrick joining us here on Mic'd Up. This is our Herman's Meat Smokehouse Chiefs insider. You can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick. And let's look at Derrick Nnadi. I'm assuming it's the league minimum signing because Nnadi has not played a ton for the Chiefs ever since he got drafted. His percentage of snaps, 54, 46, 40, 34. What do you make of this Derrick Nnadi signing?
Yeah, I probably affordability being a big thing there. It would certainly tell me that there wasn't a long-term deal out there. The second year for Nnadi testing free agency and hasn't really found that deal yet. I'm sure that playing time and injuries have been a concern for some teams. Nnadi hasn't had really anything that's really kept him out significantly, but he's had some back issues and things that have slowed him down a little bit. But hey, the Chiefs need rotational guys, and he's been a very good rotational piece for them. I mean, he started a lot of games, even though he hasn't necessarily had all the snaps that everybody else has had. Definitely, I think an important piece for them, somebody that they really like, a team guy. All those things you want to check off. Derrick Nnadi is one of them. So I think this was another case of, hey, if Derrick Nnadi falls through to the second or third wave of free agency is still there, Chiefs would have loved to have him back. So again, I think just another player kind of slipping through the cracks and still being an affordability signing for this team.
I'm not so sure that he doesn't make the roster. And the reason why I say that is, if they go out and they draft a defensive tackle or let's say someone of the likes of Tershawn Wharton. I remember when Tershawn Wharton as a UDFA all of a sudden just burst on the scene. I'm like, look at this, kid from Missouri, formerly Missouri Rolla. It will forever be Rolla. It will not be Missouri S&T. It is Rolla.
There.
By the way, their field when I played on there, dumpster fire. You want to talk about locker rooms? Awful. Like that. I don't know. Maybe it's better now. Maybe it's better now. I don't know. But when I played there in 2004, man, that whole entire place was terrible. But anyways, enough me dumping on Missouri Rollin, Missouri S&T. Like, what if somebody comes out there? Like, I look at it as maybe something happens in the draft, and this is like an Austin Blythe situation where they signed him in the offseason. They're like, yeah, we don't even need you anymore. I'm not so sure he's even going to be on the roster.
It's a possibility. I mean, right now you look at it. I would say probably pretty good case that he will. I mean, the Chiefs are going to most likely carry 4 or 5 defensive tackles, and with Noddy, I mean, I think you'd say they only have really 4, primary defensive tackles on the team right now. Wharton's coming back from an injury, so I want to hedge your bets a little bit there about how much he's going to be ready and how much playing time he's going to get this year coming back. Obviously, you got Chris Jones, but Danny Shelton's the only other guy that's under contract right now, and he never got on the field last year. So there's still more pieces to add. I think you're right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they still looked at free agency. They'll probably end up taking at least 6 defensive tackles to camp. So between that, maybe a rookie signing, a draft pick, you're right. I mean, I think they'll still invest some resources into that. There's no guarantee outside of, I think, Chris Jones and Wharton about who's going to be on this roster. There's going to be some competition, but right now I think Noddy would have a leg up over a lot of other guys.
All right, you got Danny Shelton on one side of the teeter-totter. You've got Derrick Noddy on the other. Where does it go?
Danny lost a little bit of weight last year, but I think Noddy would still need some help to get that into the teeter-totter up. I think Chris might have to put at least a hand on there and push it or something.
That would be one teeter-totter match that I would love to see. Derrick Noddy and
I need to see the specs on that teeter-totter before. I need to have an engineer come in and take a look at
it. You mentioned, the amount of D linemen. They normally carry what total D linemen, edge and defensive tackle? It's 8, right? They always like to have a backup for the starter, correct?
Yeah, I mean 8 to 10 is usually they've carried as many as 10 before, and
they really
like that that split. Yeah, I think there were times last year where they carried 10. So it can go 8 or 9 is pretty normal, and they obviously like to have a good split, 4 or 5, 4 at each spot with an extra one, being whoever is the best. But and this could be different because there's some guys. I mean, with Charles Omenihu, I mean that's a guy that can move around the line. I mean, I expect that he's probably going to be primarily an edge and kick inside on third downs, but he's also a guy that I think you could see kicking inside on first and second down when needed.
And that's why I look at it. To me, if you go by, all right, they've got 4 defensive tackle or 4 defensive linemen, and then they're going to back up every one of them. You've got 6 of the 8 or 6 of the 9 already set on the roster if you go by this free agency. Karlaftis, Dana, Omenihu, and then to me the draft. They're going to draft a defensive end. And then you've got Jones, Noddy, Wharton, and then another to be determined, whether that's Danny Shelton or one of the guys in the practice squad. Joseph Kando, Malik Herring, something of that. But I think the D line is starting to come into shape with they've got 6 signed and we're looking at 8 to 9 on the defensive line. And I also think, that Chanel can also potentially play something of that nature in a sub package.
Yeah, that's the one sub package I still wanted to see is Chanel kind of kicking down as an outside edge rusher. I mean, I want to see that. I don't think we really got to see it a whole lot last year. I'm intrigued by that. I think you're right. I mean, investing on the defensive line. I mean, I could see them going both defensive end and defensive tackle if the right names fall to them into the draft. We'll see. But I also think, I mean, there are so many names right now on that veteran list that you look at as far as guys who are out there that in the absolute, Melvin Ingram, Carlos Dunlap, Terrell Suggs kind of category. I mean, I fully expect that, hey, there's going to be some veteran 30 plus years walking in July or August in the St. Joe, because there's just too many good names out there of some guys that I think have zero interest of going through OTAs, but you get to training camp and they're going to be like, okay, where can I go get a ring? And one of those guys, if not a couple of those guys, I think we might be walking through the door late in the season.
We're talking with Matt Derrick. He is our Herman's Meat Smokehouse Chiefs insider here on Mic'd Up. All right, wide receiver. Do they view Tony as the number one?
I'm not sure yet. I think that there is still, enough unknown about him that they really don't know for sure. I mean, obviously the injuries are a concern, so I think that they're banking on a little bit of that. And I think there's also something about not wanting to overload him too much still. I think they view him certainly as a ceiling as the potential for a number one, but they've really just got him into a sliver of the pie of the offense last year. There's still so much work to do. So one, they really don't know for sure how much of the offense that he's going to be able to pick up, how comfortable he's going to be in different roles. How much they can improve his conditioning and flexibility maybe so that the injuries aren't as big of a deal. I think there's enough X factors there that they're not banking on him being a one right now. I mean, I think that if they were penciling it in, I think they'd probably say, hey, he's a three guy right now. And they might even be able to pencil him up to a two. I mean, they might just go ahead, hey, right now we think he's, better and more flexible, Sky Moore at a couple of spots. We'll see. But I think that's still unknown. It really could go a lot of different ways. I think just once they get him in the program for OTAs and they can see how he handles the full playbook.
All righty. I want you to, if you had to place a bet, all right? Because hey, maybe sports gambling is coming to Missouri. If you had to place a bet, do they sign either Odell Beckham or DeAndre Hopkins? You had to say yes, they will. No, they won't. What would you say?
If I had to move my chips either to yes or no right now, I'm putting my chips on yes.
Really?
I think one of them ends up here. There's just too much smoke for it not to happen to me. I think Odell Beckham is probably less likely. We'll see what happens. I mean, it sounds like something with Hopkins could be happening pretty quickly.
But
so
doesn't that go against everything that they're doing? Like going after somebody who's 32 years old. Everybody else is young. Like every single person on this Chiefs defense is under 30. And yet, on the offensive side, you've got Travis Kelce and then everybody else is young. Why would you change kind of what your whole entire team building philosophy is?
I don't disagree with that because my idea of whether they will versus whether they should are probably two different things. I mean, I've got worries about both those guys. I mean, as far as the injury history goes and how much you can expect them to play 17 games in a postseason. But the other thing that goes counter to this is that we've had kind of Brett Veach, kind of proclaim at least a couple of things in his career as GM. That he's always going to do. One is that he's always going to, after the Super Bowl 55, he's always going to protect Patrick Mahomes. And the other one from the very beginning was that he's always going to give him weapons. So there's just not a whole lot of weapons out there left. So, I mean, if you're going to give Patrick Mahomes one more veteran guy that he can count on, I mean, those two guys are at the top of the list. There's some other names that could come in, but I just don't think that they're in the same caliber as those guys.
Alrighty, last two for the road. You mentioned St. Joe. I have not seen. Are they officially going back to St. Joe? Like, what is the status there for Chiefs training camp? Because this last year was the second year of the 2-year contract that they signed. What are they planning on doing for training camp?
They are, as my understanding, is planning on St. Joe. If I remember correctly, they extended it for one more year after the COVID year kind of messed everything up a little bit. So I believe that is still the plan. I mean, normally, yeah, you're right. I mean, they have like a press release.
Oh, yeah, already by now.
Where it would be and everything like that. But everyone I've talked to is at this point assuming they're going to St. Joe. So I'd be surprised at this point if anything pops up. But yeah, until we get an official notice, I suppose, hey, be on the alert.
Alrighty, lastly, are you cheering for Princeton now in the NCAA tournament? And if not, who are you cheering for?
I probably should because they're an underdog and everything, but I don't know if I can go that. At this point, I'm just going for anybody who's not Alabama. I'll go for anybody. But I'll jump on the K-State bandwagon. Got nothing against the Wildcats. So if there's any team that's left to win it, hey, I'll root for K-State.
Matt,
go Ema.
We root for you. That's what I know here at this station. We root for Matt Derrick. Matt, We appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll find out if all your chips cashed in on either D-Hop or OBJ comes to fruition.
Yeah, if you place a bet based on me, you're probably not going to make a lot of money. But God bless you all.
That is Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. We're going to talk more wide receiver and what they're going to do there. Some tea leaves, perhaps, from a specific individual who's got some pull.
Got some weight to throw around.
Yep.
Just a little bit of weight to throw around.
His name rhymes with Schmatrick Schmishmomes. So we will discuss that coming up as well. Are you rooting for the Hogs?
No. So I know we can get to break here quickly. I don't blame anyone whose idea is like, I'm going to root for the team that knocked me out because then I can say I lost, which went pretty far. Yeah. I will never be that person.
I'm never that guy either.
I will never be that guy. No. Like, if Arkansas gets their butts handed to them this next matchup they have, I will laugh very much. If UConn beats them by 30, I will just chuckle.
Here's the team that you should root for.
Who's that?
Florida Atlantic.
Wouldn't mind if FAU does some good things.
Who? Florida Atlantic.
Listen, there's still an Ivy League team in this tournament, so you know who I'm rooting for.
That is true. The Nerds. Coming up, we'll talk all things Royals and some World Baseball Classic. Jake and Fulton, hour number 2. Thank you so much for stopping by on this overcast, rainy edition on this Tuesday. K-State women in action tonight in the WNIT. K-State men taking on the Michigan State Spartans coming up on Thursday. 4:30 pregame coverage, 5:30 with the tip-off coming from MSG. We'll get to more hoops coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. Got a little odds makers edition. We'll talk Chiefs free agency wide receiver position coming forward. A lot to get to. As always, hit us up on our text line, 785-272-9429. Let us know your thoughts. But right now, we're going to talk a little baseball. And I did watch, for the first time, the World Baseball Classic yesterday.
Did you make it through the whole game?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good, because that ending was amazing.
The ending was fantastic.
It's electric.
The atmosphere there in Miami was terrific. Japan and Shohei Ohtani beating Mexico. Kudos to the Mexico team, man. They
can play.
They overachieved, I think, or outperformed maybe expectations is a better word than overachieved. But Japan with a walk-off win. The players went nuts and crazy. And so you got the WBC finals tonight, USA versus Japan. And I don't mean this like hyperbole. This will be the most watched baseball game in the history of the sport. Half the TVs in the country of Japan were watching that baseball game yesterday.
Yeah.
Japan versus Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
That was according to the TV numbers. You know how we say, in Kansas City during the Super Bowl, 40% of the TVs or whatever it was were on the Super Bowl. Half the TVs in the country of Japan. The country. Not Tokyo, not Osaka, no, the whole entire country. All right. I mean, the Super Bowl doesn't even get that.
No.
And that was for a semifinal. Now this is for the whole entire thing.
The whole shebang.
And that's why this is going to be the most watched baseball game in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
When you combine, you combine, the United States.
Yeah, when you combine
Japan,
the markets, the fact of the matter is almost the entire country of Japan is going to watch this game tonight.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because this is the biggest sport in the entire country of Japan.
And that is what I want to talk about right now. I see a lot of this of why don't we get invested more into the World Baseball Classic? Why don't we do that? And the simple reason is baseball is not the main sport for our country.
There was a time long ago when using the phrase America's pastime to describe baseball was apropos. it no longer applies to the majority of people. It just doesn't.
I actually think the term America's pastime, you want to talk about splitting up the word, it really is. It's America's past.
Yeah, if you really want to break it down, no, true. But
it really, really has.
In the 50s and the 60s, baseball was king.
I would even say in the 70s, you had the Big Red Machine going on and everything.
And just really, I would say probably the 90s is when the NFL started to really take their foothold.
Yeah.
Like, that's still before my time, so I'm going off, other people's things here. But it's changed. And yeah, I think that's going to lead to a good thing. Like, there's reason these other countries it's different. That's
why I've seen some other shows and everything, say like, how come the atmosphere for Marlins games is not the same it was last night, Yeah. And the reason why I'm going to say this is that there are 4 countries in the entire world who, and 4, maybe 5, depending upon, the real super small ones.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 4 main countries in the world that baseball is the king.
Yeah.
And they are Japan,
mm-hmm.
Venezuela,
mm-hmm.
the Dominican Republic,
mm-hmm.
Cuba,
mm-hmm.
and if you want to go like Curacao or, some of the smaller ones like that.
I'll tag something onto this just as a little bit. Taiwan and Korea also count.
Okay.
Those 3 Asian countries of Japan, Taiwan, and Korea. Baseball is the biggest sport.
Is it still Taiwan or is it Chinese Taipei?
It depends.
I have no idea.
It's a very, very complicated political topic.
Not getting involved.
Yeah. But those 3 countries, it is baseball and then a gap the size of the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean combined. But overall, the point is still there.
And when you look at the teams who are the most passionate about baseball are those teams. It's just like in the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Every country outside of Japan, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Venezuela, the United States, and China, soccer is the absolute king, and that is why it dominates. Now, in Europe, you've got, basketball starting to pick up a little bit more in those countries. And that's why we will never have that type of connection or emotion to baseball the way that Venezuela does, the way that Japan does, the way that the DR, that Cuba, just like we will never have the same passion for soccer that Spain or Brazil or Argentina. They don't. So, I see all these people going, how come we can't do this? How come? Because we do. We have a sport.
Yeah.
It's called football.
Yeah, it's American football.
And the difference is that there is no World Football League.
Yeah, there's no international football tournament that can be put on because
there's none of that.
It is a purely, is it growing in other countries? It is. It's working on it.
There was a couple Washburn players are playing in a pro football league in Germany or overseas, but I mean, it
is a primarily American dominated sport.
Yes.
And that's where all the focus is. So if football would become more international and somehow would become an international tournament of football, then you would see this type of thing on the American side because that's what that is.
Yes.
And it's just, we see it in other countries because for a bunch of other countries, the World Cup's their biggest thing because they love that. For baseball and for those baseball-loving countries, this is such a big thing. Like, there was, during one of Team Japan's games, Ken runs all the Fox team was, kind of doing some reports, some stuff. The highest thing most Japanese players want to do, like what their ultimate end goal culmination is playing for Samurai Japan. It's playing for Team Japan.
Yeah.
Like, it's not go to the majors. It's, there's a few Japanese league teams they let play for. But their overall, if I can do one thing and my life is made, it's I go play for Team Japan. I play for Samurai Japan.
And same thing for all the that's the reason why I'm not trying to say, to everybody going, why can't we get invested in this?
At least we can, but it's not that easy.
No, it's just baseball is not that sport right now.
The spark has kind of died for
in this
baseball.
country. And so and they play the game differently. They play the game with more fun, with more passion, with more, flair, like Randy Arozarena catching the ball at the wall last night, and he just
stunting and posing.
Stood there.
That was awesome.
Soaked it in.
That
for
was
Team
so
Mexico.
amazing.
So
yeah,
that's what I want to look at. And do I think I look right here at the World Baseball Classic as kind of what the World Cup has done for soccer.
Yeah.
The World Cup over the last couple of years, and even going back, to 2008 and when they went down to Brazil, and, you even had the local guys and Beasler and Zusi, that really helps, ignite soccer. It really, really did.
It did.
And I don't know if the World Baseball Classic can do that for baseball, but it's the only thing that baseball has left to really spark the youth, because and I think that you can't move it anywhere. You can't do that. You're not.
We've talked the only way that you can move its timing is if you lopped off a month of the Major League Baseball season.
Well, they're not going to do that. And and I look at it at this way too. I kind of liken the World Baseball Classic right now to hockey in the Olympics, because for a while it was just amateurs in the Olympics for hockey. Then they allowed NHL players to play in it. And man, was that fun. That was awesome. That was exciting. And then just recently they were like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore, because they took a sabbatical. The NHL season did not. Just like this last year.
Yeah, the Premier League and all the other soccer leagues just paused for the World Cup,
because they know how big of a deal it is. And so now the Olympics, for the Winter Olympics, will not have NHL players. I believe I'm correct there. And to me, that is a very short-term goal, not seeing the long term.
Yeah.
And the reason I look at this is the best way to generate buzz for your product and your sport is to create some type of buzz around it. And when you get, the best of the best, the Steven Stamkoses of the world in hockey, they're not on a big international stage, because international stuff it tugs at your heartstrings. It's like Team USA. That's why it's such a big deal.
It's playing for pride of country, which resonates with every person.
Every person, exactly. Yeah. And that's why you try to capitalize on that. And that's what the United States Soccer Association needs to do and is trying to do. This is baseball's opportunity. Yeah. This is your chance. The problem is for baseball, it's at a time where not many people are watching it, because as we talked about it before, it's at a time where everybody's eyeballs are somewhere else. Yeah. There needs to be, whether it is the way that they promote it, whether the way, and also I think some of this is just because of the newness of the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, we have to remember the World Baseball Classic has only existed for 17 years.
Yeah, there's only been 5 of them.
Yeah,
that's it.
First one was in 06.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
So, and then they had that big gap thanks to COVID that really threw everything off.
So I look at this as sometimes it's going to take a little bit before this get together. If you ask anyone else outside of the U.S., and it's, if you ask the players, it's different, but you just get the sense of, and this also goes to show you that the owners are looking out for the short term and not the long term, because the owners would look at this and be like, hey, our players want to participate in this. This is something that does matter to them. somehow you have to get it so it is a bigger deal on the national side of things. And that's where something that I think that the United States can use this to their advantage.
Mhm.
Every other country will play whenever they're scheduled.
Yeah, like every other professional league would take a pause to have this tournament.
Yes.
They would move things like a bunch of the American players stayed in spring training as long as they could, then moved out. Darvish never showed up to Padres spring training so we could go to Japan and play in their exhibition games before this started. Like, there is and that's the other real thing I want to make sure we're framing this as is it is all about if there's a lack of interest, it's purely on the American side. Like, in other international baseball, like that's their point of American TVs might not spike tonight. 90% of the country of Japan's watching this game.
Yeah.
Good chunk of Southeast Asia is going to watch this game, and all these different things here. So I think, and I'm with you in the idea of if Major League Baseball is not going to lop off part of a season, and they won't. And the other thing is, part of the reason some big pitchers aren't in this for the Americans is you haven't ramped up your arm yet.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I think really you could do, and this require balancing other scheduling too, June exists with nothing else going on. MLB, take a pause in June. There's a 2 to 3 week pause. Everyone wants to go. We're going to run this middle of June. What other game is in town? And on the American side of things,
isn't the NBA in June?
Their finals are probably their playoffs are kind of slowly, I think, going in there. Cool. That's your only other game in town you're competing with. And, I'm not trying to throw shade at the NBA. But that's not like competing with March Madness.
No.
Competing with the NBA playoffs before the NBA finals ain't like competing with March Madness. So.
No, I think the players' interest.
And
let me rephrase it. The United States players, the Mike Trouts and the Mookie Bettses of the world, care way more about this than the average Joe Blow fan.
Yeah. And that's the good thing to help grow this more is the American position players, especially side of these things, they care. And Mike Trout said he was going to do this and was basically a recruiter. It was I'm getting as many big guys as I can. We're going to do this. And Trout and Mookie Betts have basically said they're here until their careers are done. Until they can't play anymore, they're going to do this. And Bryce Harper would have been on this team had his elbow not blown out.
Correct.
Bryce has said he was going to play in this. So likely when this comes up in 2026, your outfield is Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and Bryce Harper, 3 big faces of the sport. The American side of this from a team standpoint is doing this right and is on the cusp of perfectly building it. Just need to get some pitchers into this. But you can then use that to grow it from the American fan base as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue here. By the way, for those of you wondering, you can bet on Team USA to win.
Are they still the favorite?
By 1.5 runs.
I cannot lie to you. That Japan plus money on the money line is intriguing. Mainly as an emotional hedge. Because obviously I'm rooting for the Americans tonight.
So that's a little
this game's gonna be so much fun tonight.
Gamble on that. It's tonight, 6:00.
You can watch Shohei Ohtani close out a baseball game for the first time since 2016.
Maybe.
If he's not used, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. Coming up next, though, everyone loves the list. Our favorite and places that we'd want to go play basketball. That is right. Basketball arenas. We'll get to that coming up next. The top basketball gyms, arenas that you've not been to. All right.
Yep.
I didn't include Allen Fieldhouse because I've been to Allen Fieldhouse.
You've been down.
So
that's fair.
That is what our list today is. Where you would like to go watch or play a basketball game.
Number 4 for me is probably the most basic and kind of on the list, but I still think there's some nice history with it. The name has changed, so, the name's not as it used to be. But go to Crypto.com Arena, formerly the Staples Center. I think that has enough nice history to it. Would be very interesting to be around it. The name change, I think, takes some of the luster off because you don't say Staples anymore. But still, I think it's got enough juice there.
It'll always be the Staples
Yeah,
Center.
no, I agree. And I think that makes something, is you're like, even when the name changes, like, it's always this. So, yeah.
It's different now because of who's on the sideline, on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
But Cameron Indoor doesn't have the same type of sexiness now that Coach K isn't there.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. But number 4 for me is Cameron Indoor, just because it is so small. People don't realize how small that
small,
place is.
intimate, old.
Cameron Indoor, number 4 for me.
Number 3, up in the Northeast, coined the Cathedral of college basketball, the Palestra, where the old Big Five of Phillies teams used to play.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful old building with a lot of history.
Number 3, I went with, it's iconic, not because of who plays there, but because of the show. But it's Hinkle Fieldhouse.
Yeah, Hinkle.
Where you walk in there, and if you see this, the same length of these is the same back at our gym in Hickory.
Yeah.
Like Hinkle Fieldhouse. Come on, it's Hinkle.
Number 2 for me, kind of cheating because it's not an arena, but it is a famous court, Rucker Park in New York City.
Rutgers number 2 for me too. Yeah.
Got to bring up Rucker Park and hoops.
Yes, Rucker Park, the most famous street outdoor court in all of the country.
Number 1 for me, though, it's MSG. It's Madison Square Garden.
It has to be MSG.
It's Madison Square Garden.
When the Boston Garden was torn down, MSG's the last one.
Agreed.
Man. It really, really is. Coming up, we will talk with Dan Lucero for a little crosstalk. Odds makers. We'll talk more Chiefs and where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe We'll discuss the wide receiver position as more reports coming out from Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. We'll get to that coming up in the 2 o'clock hour here on this edition of Mic'd Up. K-State headed to the Little Apple and MSG coming up today. They're flying. We'll have the press conferences tomorrow, both Michigan State and Kansas State coming up tomorrow here on Mic'd Up. We will get to that. And of course, the game coming up on Thursday, 4:30 pregame coverage, 5:30 tip-off from MSG, Madison Square Garden. And there's a great piece from Kels Robinette, and we'll talk with Kels on game day. He's going to be too busy tomorrow. Normally comes on Wednesday. We're going to talk with Kels Robinette coming up on game day on Thursday about just how big and how important MSG is to people from New York.
Yeah.
In the 5 boroughs like that. That's Augusta National to anybody who golfs. And I'm talking about anywhere in the country. Is if you play golf, like you would play Augusta National. That's what Ish Massoud and Naquan Tomlin and Marquise Noel are. What's going to happen there when they play at Madison Square Garden? Like that's the pinnacle of achievement, playing at Madison Square Garden. So and the Garden hasn't hosted a whole lot of NCAA tournament sites. This is like a rarity. It really, really is, because they always would go to Brooklyn or go somewhere else. So this is a big deal. It really, really is. We are joined now by Dan Lucero from 580 Sports Talk. Dan, what's an arena? Our list was basketball arenas that you've never gone to that you'd like to. What would be one of your top 2?
I think you covered most of them that I haven't been to either that I would like to go to. I'll throw one in that it might be a little bit off the board, but it's still something of a mecca of Philadelphia college basketball, the Palestra.
Yeah, that was on mine. The Palestra it's something, man.
So that would be on my list. Certainly Cameron Indoor, like you mentioned. Hinkle Fieldhouse would be really cool. Assembly Hall in Bloomington. I went to college in Indiana. I never made it to Bloomington or Indianapolis for a college basketball game. I kind of still regret that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can see that.
But yeah, I mean, you made the point. There's not a lot of NBA arenas that are like that anymore, that have that sort of feel about them.
Does the United Center, that Jordan played there?
I mean, he did, but they all, like, you could show me the inside of an arena and take all the banners down and just have a generic floor and say, what's this place? And like, I wouldn't be able to tell half of them apart. That's just the way the way the NBA arenas are anymore.
Except for MSG, the Garden.
Yes, that's its own thing. That's the mecca.
When they tore down the Garden, the Boston Garden. Like,
no, Madison Square Garden was always the Garden.
No, but I'm talking like the one that was like in lockstep for so many years was the Boston Garden.
Yes, and then the Forum in LA, and a lot of great historic NBA buildings.
I mean, basically the Boston Garden, when they tore that down, that was like when they tore down Yankee Stadium. I mean, the place where Russell played, the place where Red Auerbach was, and Larry Bird and all that kind of stuff. And it's just the new was it TD Ameritrade TD.
I believe it is known today as the TD Ameritrade or the TD Garden, the TD Garden.
Yeah. Was
the Fleet Center when it opened?
Just because you put the word garden behind it doesn't mean it's cool, okay? I'm sorry. Just not the case. K-State. Best season if they win Thursday, where does it rank?
Boy, as somebody who hasn't followed the program for my entire life, I don't feel ultra qualified to say, but absolutely I think this is a better season than 2018
I agree.
When they went to the Elite Eight. This is already a better accomplishment. That was, the Elite Eight run, it was a thrill ride. It was out of nowhere. It was fun. I'm not diminishing that necessarily, but everything that this season has represented, like as a program rebirth.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to put it up there with like 2008 or 2010, those kinds of seasons where it felt like a rebirth. It felt like something new and it felt like the start of something, not the culmination of something. Like 2018, 2019 felt like almost
that's a good
like
point. I
2019
like that.
it felt like the culmination of something. We had those seniors, and not that this isn't a senior heavy roster, but that felt like, all right, this is the best it's going to get in the Bruce Weber era, is these guys making this tournament run one year, winning the Big 12 the year after that. What Jerome Tang has done is just rip the ceiling off the program, as we've understood the ceiling to be for Kansas State basketball, and made, I think, fans, boosters, administration, I think now everybody is dreaming bigger about what K-State basketball can be based upon the results that Jerome Tang has gotten in year one. So, yeah, I think this, like, historically speaking, I can't imagine there have been too many more impactful seasons. Maybe more success. You wanted to find success by, like, the 51 team playing in the national championship game, teams that have played in Final Fours. We'll see where this team's story ends. But as far as historical impact, I can't imagine there are many that rank above this.
I always find it, interesting how people remember players. Like, to me, like, Jacques Vaughn was just larger than life when I was growing up. Jacques Vaughn was just enormous.
Because you were a kid.
Yes.
That is the number one factor, is how old were we when this player was doing what they were doing. Yeah.
Jordan, I remember I used to try to jump from the free throw line and try to dunk it on my goal. And obviously I was like, 10 years old.
I could do it on the Fisher Price hoop when I was like 5 or 6.
So when I look at, to me, the most fascinating character, maybe, and player in the NCAA tournament the rest of the way, it might be Marquise Noel. And the reason I say this is because what can happen if Marquise Noel takes this team, dream big, right? If they go to the Final Four, and Marquise Noel is that dude, okay?
If he puts up 2 legendary performances at the Mecca basketball in his hometown,
and if he
does it as a 5'7" point guard,
and if they do make the Final Four, it will be the greatest season in K-State basketball history. I really do believe that, considering what has all gone down. And
it's a little harder to make the Final Four now than it used to be. No, I would agree completely.
Like, where you want to talk about a guy who transferred in and spent 2 years, and he'll go down as a K-State legend. I mean, he will go down as a guy like Rolando Blackman, like a Mitch Richmond. And I don't give a damn what he does in his pro career, because I don't know if it's going to be a great one, because he is 5'7". But that's the thing that I look at as, what one transfer. And last year he was a guy who was just so up and down, and you could see, the flashes, and you could see him, and now what he's been able to do this year,
I think,
like, it's stuff of just like, it's a movie.
Yeah.
If that does occur.
This whole season, I used the word cinematic yesterday on 580 Sports Talk. This whole season for Kansas State has felt very cinematic, from the coach who arrives, his first opportunity to be a head coach after 20 years as an assistant, and where he came from just to be an assistant coach for as long as he got a chance to be. Marquise Noel, and I don't mean to shortchange Ish in this narrative, but Marquise Noel is the one who stayed, who was the most important. Like, it's a big deal that Ish stayed too. And I mean, I'm glad he had his moment hitting that big shot against Kentucky, but Marquise Noel is the one who stayed, who believed, who kept it together, who advocated for Jerome Tang, who said, I don't care who you bring in here, we're going to have success, who helped to recruit guys into the program, who will almost willed this into existence in his senior season. Yeah, like, I don't know what exactly the standards are. Like, Kansas has a very cut and dry set of standards for how you get in the rafters, how they put your name and number up in the rafters. I don't know if Kansas State does or not. I know they got some other guys that they need to get up there first, like Jacob Pullen. And if you ask me, I think Barry Brown and Dean Wade have cases for inclusion in the Bramlage Coliseum rafters. But for a guy with, just a 2-year career, like, have there been more impactful, influential Kansas State basketball players than Marquise Noel? I don't know. Not in the modern era, maybe not.
That's why I find it so much fun for this game. And I honestly, to this time, is 146 on a Tuesday, right? I don't know who I'm picking. I don't know if I'm taking Kansas State yet. I don't know if I'm taking Michigan State. Michigan State's a 1.5 point favorite. I do think Tennessee is the favorite coming out of this quartet, but it wouldn't stun me at all if any one of these 4 teams ends up in Houston. This is the only spot, the only 4 brackets that I can say I will be surprised if any one of those. I will not be surprised if any 4 teams. If Princeton makes it, San Diego State makes it, if Xavier makes it, if Miami makes it, if Arkansas makes it, I would be surprised. I would be surprised. So these 4, I have no earthly idea.
To your point about Michigan State being favored, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the last time that a 7 seed was favored to beat a 3 seed in the Sweet 16, you have to go back to 2015 when the 7 seed was Michigan State, and they were a 1.5 favorite over a Big 12 team, Oklahoma, in a game played in the state of New York. Michigan State won the game. Won it by 4. Obviously, it's just unique coincidences there, and I don't necessarily believe that past is prologue. That was 8 years ago, for God's sake. But yeah, that just goes to show you it's pretty rare for a 7 to be favored over a 3 in this spot. For a 7 seed to be a favorite in a Sweet 16 team, usually they have to be playing the 15, right? And they're playing the 3. I guess they wouldn't play the 15 in the third. Maybe they play the 14. But
no, that's why I can
but
see.
Doesn't this Kansas State team seem to thrive with that? You put a little chip on their shoulder. You put a chip on Marquise Noel's shoulder. You tell him he's an underdog in a Sweet 16 game.
I think that's the greatest way to put it on Marquise and this KC team as a whole. Just put them as dogs and just see what happens. It usually seems to spark them. The greatest part of this run for me, and it goes back to something Jerome Tang said in the post game after Kentucky, when he was chatting with Marquise Noel, that one of Marquise's idols is Kemba Walker, and the run Kemba went on. And he just told Jerome, I don't care what we got. Kemba went to a national championship game and won a title with himself and a bunch of sophomores and young guys. And that's the mentality Marquise Noel has. And Dan, I think you used the perfect word with cinematic in what is happening right now, which is even more if the New York guys come out and have great performances at MSG to lead this team to a Final Four. I don't know what else could top anything left in this season outside of winning a national title, obviously. That would top literally anything at all, period.
I think K-State's ceiling is higher than Michigan State's. But I think, and I'm going to maybe try to do a little bit more digging on this, but the tournament, you need. I mentioned this earlier. You need gray hairs, man. You need to have some vets. The one and done talent pool is great. Do you know the last one and there's really only been 2 1 and
2012 Kentucky, 2015 Duke.
That's it. That is it.
And in the post-COVID era, the average age of teams that win national championships has gone up even further. It used to be around 20, 21. Last 2 national champions, and we're going to dive into this even further today on 580 Sports Talk and get into the real meat and potatoes of these numbers and who are the oldest teams left. But like the average age of the last 2 national champions weighted by minutes is over 22 years old.
You look at Jared Butler and you look at Davion Mitchell and those dudes at Baylor, and then all the KU guys, they're like getting Social Security checks.
Yeah, like Jalen Coleman-Lands was 37, so maybe he skewed the results a little bit for KU.
But
year.
McCormick and Ochai came back, and so and that's why Tennessee beat Duke. They just it was like dad strength. Okay, Tennessee had dad strength, and Duke was like this young whippersnapper. When we were all growing up, I'd take on my dad, right? And my dad's a big dude, he's a tall guy. And I remember you just try to go up and it was like running into a brick wall. And you're like, how? You're old. And of course, when you're young, you think your parents are always old. And you're like, I can't do it. But then that is something, And that's why I look at Tennessee as that's what happened there. And Texas, that's the reason why I picked Texas all the way to the finals.
They're old.
He didn't, Rodney didn't recruit any of these dudes. He didn't he basically is throwing out the ball. and just says, go do things. You know what I mean? And that's why I look at some of these. That's why UCLA to me is an interesting one. Drew Timme, who's 28 years old, has played more basketball than ever. And that's why K-State, I think, has done as well as they have, because they've been through,
got a lot of dudes who've played a lot of games.
Yeah. That's why if I were to pick the Final Four right now, I would pick Bama, I would pick Texas, and then I have no idea KU or K-State. I really don't. I think that is an absolute coin toss, which is why is it still 1.5 point spread?
You still 1.5 last I checked.
Which that's not an upset to me. Either team wins, that's not an upset. I'm sorry. That's not. If it's a 1.5 point spread, that's not an upset. And then I would probably lean towards UCLA maybe in that other one, but that's another fun one. I'm excited for this stretch of basketball this next week. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Team USA or Team Japan tonight?
I picked Japan at the beginning, and I think I'm going to ride with Japan tonight. All that lefty talent in the Japan order, and the only lefties the United States can throw at them in a spot tonight are Kyle Freeland and Aaron Loop. And listen, you will find no bigger fan of Kyle Freeland in this building than me.
He says with the Colorado Rockies hat on his head.
Yeah. But do I like the thought of him coming in a one-run game in the 5th and saying, hey, go get Ohtani, go get was it Murakami who got the winning hit last night?
Yeah, Murakami, the big hit. Yoshida before that.
Yeah, Yoshida. Yeah, go get those 3 guys. Or telling Aaron Loop, go get those 3 guys in a one-run game in the 8th. Like, ooh, I don't know, man. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for the United States. And although it could be moot if Trey Turner, America's power source, continues to hit balls deep into the night.
All righty. You are in charge of the World Baseball Classic. You can do anything and everything you want.
Okay.
You want to change the dates, you can do so. You have the ultimate power. What would you do?
I don't know that I'd do much of anything. I think that logistically, this is the best time you're going to get for it.
No, I'm saying you can play wherever you want. If you want to play it in June,
I think
do it.
I think this is the best time for it, because June you won't get major league players. They'll never do it. Major League Baseball will never take 2 weeks out of their season to stage this tournament. So no point in asking. Doing it in November doesn't make any sense. Players are tapped out from their club baseball seasons, and
you're going up against football.
Yeah. This is the time to do it. These are the sites to do it. If you've seen the crowds in Taiwan, if you've seen the crowds in Tokyo, maybe have, rotate those maybe with a site in the Dominican Republic, play there, play in Cuba. If, maybe that's not realistic, but like play in Puerto Rico, play in Mexico, maybe more sites for first round games. But man, if you watched United States, Venezuela, or if you watched Japan and Mexico last night, you would leave saying, this is perfect. Don't touch this. This is great. You can always hope for more participation, but I think the more that players, I guarantee you there are guys who maybe turned Team USA down, who caught what that ballpark was for USA Venezuela and said, damn, I'm not missing this in 3 years.
No, that's what Mike Trout did.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the first, what is it, one of them,
2017.
and then he said, I'm
not missing the next one.
I'm not missing it, and then the next one, of course, didn't happen. But I think that is something that this is such in the beginning. This is not even in the end. This is like the newborn stage. Like, this has only happened 5 other times.
Yeah.
And the first 3, I don't even think I remember, to be honest with you. Like Japan winning back-to-back, I didn't even know they did that. Like, I didn't even know the World Baseball Classic was a thing back in 2006. So to be honest with you, like, this is a thing since 2016 for me. So it's like in the newborn stage, and I think that might help. And we'll see if the owners actually see that this could help grow your game in the United States. It really, really could. Dan, we appreciate the time.
As always, it's a pleasure.
Coming up, we were going to talk all things wide receiver 1, plus we've got odds makers. We will get to all of that for the final hour here on this edition of Mic'd Up. Hour of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton coming to you on this Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get to a little odds makers coming up here in just a little bit. As always, Let us know your thoughts on our text line, 785-272-9429. Hit us up on our YouTube comments. Let us know your thoughts. We'll get into some Big 12 hoops, as well as Kansas State in action. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. So we will get to all of that coming up at the bottom of this hour. We'll get to more Big 12 and K-State talks because someone on the YouTube comments has a great point. I wanted to bring that up as well, but running out of time when it comes to impact 2-year players for Kansas State. There was a guy who was kind of impactful for 2 years. We'll discuss that. But let us know your thoughts on our text line as well as our YouTube. Go to our YouTube page at Sports on 580. Very simple, very easy. But right now, we are going to talk all things Chiefs free agency. Derrick Nnadi joining the Kansas City Chiefs today on a 1-year deal. And this reminds me a little bit of the Demarcus Robinson contract that the Chiefs signed D-Rob back. Remember when his year was up? Or his 4 years were up for the Chiefs, and everybody's like, well, he's going to leave. And then you ended up re-signing him. You're like, why did we re-sign him? We don't really need him. He's not that great, Well, you'd still rather have a guy that can help out when you need to, knows the system, is still productive. And if you get him cheap, that's the whole point. That's how I look at this Derrick Nnadi signing. He hasn't played a ton as of, the last couple of years. Like when we talk about Derrick Nnadi, his snaps were 54%, 46%, 40%, and then last year he just played in 34% of games. He basically is your and let me put this he's also not great. Like he's not Chris Jones, no one's going to confuse him with, somebody who is elite or even above average. He's a guy who just is depth. In case somebody goes down, at least you got some experience and is going to cost you league minimum. If they draft somebody in the 6th or 7th round and ends up being maybe a little bit more explosive and a little bit better, then Derrick Nnadi might not be on the team. Like he might not. I think this is more so of it's going to cost us $1 million probably, and we'll deal with $1 million for depth. So that's the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, we've talked about the Edwards signing as well as Drew Tranquill. But man, is there a lot of fire around the wide receiver position for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network said this: the status of Arizona Cardinals star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins comes into focus. Talks are ramping up among the interested teams, sources say. Similar to Brandon Cooks, a trade would likely mean an altered contract. Now, Patrick Mahomes has been active on the social medias. He has liked a couple of tweets out there. Charles Omenihu tagged DeAndre Hopkins and says, "Come on, fam. We're waiting on you." Hashtag Chiefs Kingdom. And Patrick Mahomes liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, buddy. Patrick Mahomes also liked Des Bryant's tweet that said, "I wouldn't be surprised if Odell or D-Hop go to the Chiefs. I wouldn't be surprised if both guys go to the Chiefs." Okay, I would be very stunned if both go to the Chiefs. So I think pump the brakes there a little bit, Des Bryant. I asked Matt Derrick. Matt, the wide receiver position right now, it's pretty much done. By the way, Adam Thielen has signed with the Carolina Panthers because we were told Adam Thielen wanted to go to a contender. So
yeah, that's the biggest lie in the universe. Adam Thielen went there because the Panthers were the only one who was going to give him that much money.
Exactly. And that's okay.
You can just say you went somewhere because of the money.
Yes. Yes.
We're not going to hate you.
No. In fact, I'd actually,
I'd respect you a hell of a lot more.
I would too.
Miss me with the bull crap.
Yeah.
Just say, yes, I went here because they offered me the biggest check with the most zeros.
Now, his original thought was, I want to go to a contender.
Yeah.
But then when Carolina was like, hey, we'll give you, $20 million guaranteed, he's like,
I'll do that.
It looks like I'm going to go to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah,
I get it.
that's
I
fine.
get it. So things change when the market changes. But there's not a whole lot of free agent wide receivers left
Not
in
really.
the market. You've got, Odell Beckham Jr., you've got DJ Chark, who is really a lot like MVS, a go down the field type of guy. You don't need that. You've got, he changed his name. The Robbie Anderson changed his name.
No. Chosen Robbie Anderson.
Chosen Anderson.
Chosen Robbie Anderson.
So it's Chosen Robbie.
I don't
Anyway,
officially know, and I don't care.
I'm not gonna double name him, so I'm just gonna call him Chosen Anderson. So you've got Chosen Anderson still out there. You got Kenny Golladay still out there, but none of those guys are what you're looking for. Okay. McCole Hardman's still out there. If the Chiefs did not have Kadarius Toney, I would say, and Sky Moore, I would say, yeah, let's re-sign McCole Hardman. Let's sign McCole Hardman. But I don't think he brings something completely different than what Toney and Sky Moore bring to the table. I'm only on board if they bring in Odell Beckham Jr.
Okay.
I am not willing to pay. I don't think there'll be a contract restructure or an extension if you trade for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think you want to pay that guy that much money into your early to mid 30s. I think he's going to be 32. I'm not going to pay big time bucks for a 32 wide receiver. He ain't Jerry Rice. Okay. And that is why if they do trade for DeAndre Hopkins,
not talented actor DeAnthony Hopkins, which is actually Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah. I just think you're overpaying in a spot. That's why I am all on board with them signing Odell Beckham Jr. And he tweeted out, I'm just so confused where the quote is from me that said I want 20. All I'm saying is 4 ain't enough. I can guarantee you that the Chiefs offered him $4 million. That screams Brett Veach.
Yeah.
I think Odell Beckham Jr. having a full year off. I mean, that's the difference here. It's not like, he tore his knee up in November and we're hoping he's back come training camp. No.
He's good to go.
This is going to be like a 16-month full bore rehab that he tore it in February, and it's now been 13 months in March. So you got 14 in April, May, June, July. I mean, you're looking at a 16 to 17 month rehab situation. He should be good to go. I don't know how many people are going to are offering Odell Beckham Jr. money, because otherwise he would have already signed. If you're waiting this long, that means you're not as coveted as you once thought. Adam Schefter, when we were talking about the Orlando Brown signing, if you are not signed within the first 24 hours of the free agency period, then that means either one, you overestimated the amount of money that you were wanting, or number two, you overestimated how good you were. And if you look at it, who's getting picked up right now? Guys on super cheap deals.
Yeah, we've entered the second wave of free agency already, which is where you start getting more and more guys on 1 year prove-its.
And that's exactly what Juju did. The difference is Odell's a little bit older, but there's no such thing as a bad 1 year contract. No. And that's why I would be on board with Odell Beckham Jr. I think if they sign him, I would love that. Now, there are I don't want them to sign OBJ to $15 million. I think that's stupid. I'm not going to pay for a guy who's coming off his second ACL surgery $15 million, who's nearing his 30s. But if you can get him at a price that's reasonable, then yes, I do think that he could be a good fit for the Kansas City Chiefs. DeAndre Hopkins all depends upon what it's going to cost for draft cap. If someone said, you know what, it cost a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller, okay?
Mhm.
Well, Hopkins is better than Waller, but Waller was under contract for 4 years, okay? If you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you have to give up a 3rd or 4th-round pick and you're not going to extend DeAndre Hopkins, I can be talked into that. I can. Because his cap hit's not going to be as bad. It'll be around $14 million this year. And you're only giving up a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. I'm all right with that. I'm okay with that. But you don't need DeAndre Hopkins if you are the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't. That's why the Chiefs will look at that and to me and say, yeah, you either meet our demands. We don't need him. And I think if you had this group of wide receivers, if OBJ's in there, you got OBJ, Tony, MVS, Moore, a draft pick. That's your top 5 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Throw in Travis Kelce. That's why I would be willing to risk it if I was Kansas City. I think that the one that I would do, and it's a 1-year deal, whereas DeAndre Hopkins, you're giving up draft capital. It's going to cost a lot more. That's why I am on board. And I was on board for the Chiefs to go out and get him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There's so much smoke that it I don't want to say I would be surprised if he doesn't land in Kansas City, because there are so many other teams out there that could use somebody like OBJ, which makes me wonder why is he being too picky? Or is there no, is the big money offer out there? Like, is $4 million the most that he's getting offered? And he's just having a hard time to realize that? Or does he do the wait until training camp, see when someone gets hurt, and we'll bring him in?
Yeah, the entire situation's been kind of complicated when it comes to Odell and why it's taken this long and trying to suss it all out. Because I don't know exactly what he'd be looking for. Because there's a chance it's money, and I don't blame him for saying $4 million ain't enough. I don't blame him. He's a guy who's very talented, betting on himself. I understand that. You know. That being said, I don't know what his number would be. Maybe it's not about the single, 1-year figure. It's he wants more than 1 year. Maybe Odell doesn't want to do a 1-year deal. He wants a bit more security than a 1-year contract. Maybe that's what's not being met. I don't know on that, but I mean, I'd be on board for that. And I'm probably more on board than you are with DeAndre Hopkins, because I get it. I get the age thing. I get financials. If you can get DeAndre and come to an agreement on some kind of a very short extension that works, yeah, I get it. He's 32. The other thing is simply he's got at least a couple good years in the tank, I would like to believe and like to say, based on what he's done, because DeAndre Hopkins has put up his numbers in his career consistently, never with a great quarterback. This is what he's done in his career with usually a carousel of bums throwing in the ball. What's the best quarterback he's had throwing the football? Kyler Murray? Probably.
Matt Schaub.
So Kyler Murray? So, I get the hesitation on that one. I do. If the numbers line up, I'm more than cool with, Hopkins all comes down to me for the numbers in compensation, and beyond compensation comes into financials. Not Carolina, Arizona's willing to eat a lot of money, and you can get DeAndre to a bit of an easy thing. I'm willing to go up to a second, because the Chiefs' second is basically an early third, given where they draft at. So, but I'm kind of with Matt, Derrick. There's so much smoke around these two in particular. I just have a hard time believing one of the two doesn't end up in Kansas City. I really feel like one of them will, with just how much we're hearing.
If they have to give up their 3rd-round pick, near pick 100, I'm more on board with it. I just don't know how much that the Texans or not the Texans, the Cardinals would eat with the contract. But the Chiefs still have around, I think, $10 million in cap space right now. Because the Nadi signing is hardly nothing. The Chiefs right now have $9.5 million in cap space.
Yeah.
The Chris Jones restructure has to happen at some point.
You like to think so.
It has to happen at some point. You can't be moving on from Chris Jones. You can create a bunch of cap space from Chris Jones very, very easily coming up next year or this year and next year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they got to add somebody. I don't know if it's in the draft, and I don't know if there's I hope somebody falls. That would be terrific. The ideal situation is that OBJ nor DeAndre Hopkins get traded or signed until after the draft. And maybe that's what they're waiting for. Maybe that is the reason why it has not occurred. Because, all right, let's see what's in the draft. Well, the Chiefs didn't take a wide receiver in their first 3 picks. What are they going to do at wide receiver? Maybe that price goes up then for Odell Beckham Jr. And he will get the number that he wants. Or now the Texans, who are still going to pay DeAndre Hopkins, he's still under contract, they can maybe leverage someone into giving them a 2nd round pick. But right now, I don't see anybody giving them a 2nd round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't see that happening. Because if that would have happened already, he'd have been traded already, in my opinion. Because he doesn't have the no trade clause. Or the Chiefs, this is all perfect because there's so much smoke around both of these guys, and the Chiefs are thinking, you know what? We think Sky Moore is going to develop. We think Sky Moore is going to improve. I'm more worried about Tony and his health. I think if you've got Kelsey, Tony, MVS, and Sky Moore, I think that is a doable receiving core. Would I like to add more to that? Yes. But I do think the biggest issue is Kadarius Toney's health. I don't think you can rely on him. He is not Frank Gore where you can throw him out there and he's going to play every single game for the next 30 years. McCole Hardman, I don't know why McCole Hardman got such a bad rap about a guy. Well, he's injury prone. Do you realize that McCole Hardman played like every single game except for like this year? Like he was actually pretty healthy and he was available. But I think maybe they look at Sky Moore as a guy that, they look at him a lot like Mike Dana last year. We think Mike Dana can be a legitimate contributor. And Mike Dana he had 5 sacks last year.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's how they view kind of Sky Moore on the increase that he
and that might be, which then comes into the calculus for how they're viewing their situation for receiver. Just go real crazy. Trade up, draft a tight end in the first round. Just go full, get 2 incredibly athletic tight ends. Go get Dalton Kincaid. There's your second pass catcher.
Well, is he the one from Oregon State?
Utah.
Marquise Noel just tweeted this out. Just spoke to Coach Cal. We are all good. I was not happy with Coach Cal.
No, you weren't.
I was not happy. I think that was a very Bush League move. But Marquise Noel talked to Coach Cal, and all is right in the world. Look at that. Moving on.
Look at that. Bearing the hatchet.
We're going to talk more K-State hoops. We'll get to that coming up. All of our tournament coverage brought to you by Lewis Toyota here in Topeka, I-470 in Fairlawn. Shop local, shop Lewis. Coming up next, though, little odds makers here on Mic'd Up. Little odds makers. Alrighty, Fulton. What are the odds that K-State makes it to the Final Four?
I'm gonna go 20%. I think about 20% is their chance to make the Final Four.
I'm going to go a little higher.
Okay.
Because I don't think FAU has much of a chance.
No.
So I'm gonna go with, I think it's 30% that K-State makes the Final Four.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 30%.
The idea being, would you put Michigan State and Tennessee with a better chance? Or would you put like Michigan State, K-State pretty tied, then Tennessee with the over larger odds? Yeah. Because they have the Eastern Sweet 16 matchup. Tennessee has taken on FAU. It's easier than Michigan State and Kansas State's little matchup.
Yeah, we'll talk more Michigan State tomorrow. There's one thing that Michigan State does really, really well, which is scary.
Yeah, very scary for a one game and out game.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree.
so we're gonna get to that coming up tomorrow. So no, I'm gonna say 30%.
Okay, that's fair. We're going to go to the World Baseball Classic for mine for some fun here.
17%.
You know what I'm going to ask? You don't even know what I'm going to ask. What are the odds tonight that we get to see Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout?
17%.
Sticking with the 17%? Yep. Okay.
I don't even know if he's going to pitch.
He's going to pitch.
You know that? I thought they said he was available to pitch in the 9th.
He's going to pitch.
So the odds
in a winner take all game for a championship, I cannot imagine that Japan, unless they are smoking Team USA and up by like 5 to 6 runs, that they will not pull the bullet and go, we need Ohtani for a clutch. I think if this game is within a save situation, so within 3 runs in the 9th, Shohei Ohtani will pitch in the 9th.
So odds that Shohei Ohtani will pitch 100% for you?
Like 95.
Okay.
Because there's the small chance of it's a blowout on one end of the spectrum and they wouldn't use him. But since I think this will be a close competitive game for 9 innings, I think that Japan's closer or really need to get through this guy tonight is Shohei at some point.
Who's starting for?
I had the name, and I need to go get the name pulled back up.
No, for Team USA.
Merrill Kelly.
Wait, what?
Merrill Kelly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who that is.
Yep.
Who's he play for?
Dimebacks.
Because our actual like hitting lineup,
Fantastic.
salty.
Yeah.
I mean, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Trey Turner, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. Like,
JT Realmuto will catch tonight. That'll be really fun.
he's really, really good.
Yeah, JT Realmuto is fantastic.
Who's the worst hitter for the Team USA?
That's a great question. Honestly, that is a beautiful question.
I think it's the right fielder.
That's Mookie Betts.
Oh, yeah, who's the left fielder?
So usually it's been Mike in center, Mookie in right. Who is
Goldschmidt's at first.
Schwarber's been occasionally playing left, but he's been DHing more than playing left. Who has been smattered out there and left the most? They changed the lineup nearly every game, so it's been hard for me to keep track sometimes of who all is available. But yes, Merrill Kelly will be the starting pitcher this evening. So
Man, that's a
do
problem.
with that confidence with what you will.
That's the problem.
It's not great. Yeah, Schwarber started in left field the last game because
So the
Pete
answer-
Alonso was the DH.
Okay, so that's your answer.
Yeah.
Sure.
Probably Schwarbs is just the best way to
Okay.
put it. We got some other, good guys in there. Also, this is interesting. Nolan Arenado might not start tonight.
At third?
Yeah, he got dinged up in the game against
Nice.
Cuba.
Fine.
Well, it depends. I would probably, but who will start third base in his place? More than likely.
Bobby Witt Jr.
Correct. I assume Nolan's going to man the hot corner, but if Nolan can't go, or if they want to save Nolan for like we'll bring you off if we need you, big boy. Bobby Witt Jr.
Then
can
the
get some plate
answer
appearances
to
in
the
championship
who's
game.
the worst hitter for the Team USA is Bobby Witt Jr.
And that's sorry to Bob, but I mean, this lineup is just so
Yeah.
many good guys.
They should be able to.
Actually, no, there is a hitter worse than Bobby Witt Jr. Kyle Higashioka is the third catcher on this team.
Okay.
So no offense to Kyle Higashioka, he's the worst hitter on this
Well,
team.
he's not going to play.
I mean, probably not,
Yeah, he's not going to play.
because unless
Realmuto's gonna play.
DeRosa doesn't want to use Will Smith as the backup catcher,
Yeah.
which I would imagine. But no. Anyway, back to the overarching point. I would say like 5% because it's such a specific one-on-one matchup. I want it though. I want it so bad. I want to see it.
Here's the thing that's the positives and the negatives for guys who don't play a lot in the WBC is that Bobby Witt Jr.'s gotten like 2 at-bats in the last 2 weeks. That's not great. Brady Singer's pitched 2 innings in the last 2 weeks. That ain't great. Now, they will tell you they're so glad to be there,
Yes.
which understandable. But the fact that they are getting not a whole lot of work. Now, Bobby Witt Jr. not as big of a deal because you can get work, on a backfield. And I'm sure that some of the pitchers there are throwing to Bobby Witt Jr. out. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's some gamesmanship where you're like, nah, man, I don't want to throw it to you because I might see you in the regular season. I have no idea. But there is some negative sides to the individual to it. Now, there are positives because Bobby Witt Jr.'s around Mookie Betts.
Yeah,
Mike
he's
Trout.
learning from some of the best hitters in the league.
Yeah, so that's a great
Yeah.
situation.
Same thing for Brady and the pitching staff.
Yes, yeah. Now,
For some of them.
Now different voices connect, but it's less so to me for Brady Singers because he's got Zach Greinke that he can ask all sorts of questions to.
He's got his own mentor on his own team.
So I look at the biggest drawback to the World Baseball Classic, if you want to talk about individuals, it's the bench guys. because they don't get that. Mike Trout plays every single game. Mookie Betts plays every single game. Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, all that kind of stuff. They're getting their at-bats. They're getting their reps and everything. It's not just a full-on net negative that, hey, you know what, the bench guys like a Bobby Witt Jr. and, whoever else that they've got aren't getting any at-bats when they could be getting 70 and 80 at-bats. I think it's more so for Singer because he's not going to be stretched out at all. I mean, he'll come back and he'll have 1 week. I mean, opening day is a week
From Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And Brady Singer probably couldn't throw more than 3 innings.
See, that's where I think you're wrong.
You think he's stretched out enough?
One, when Brady had that one middle appearance where he got shelled, I mean, his limit where they wanted him to get to was 60 pitches. Like, he had 60 in the tank then. He's still stretching out ever so slow. Like, he'll be about as stretched out as he normally, like, his first start, either on opening day or on Saturday. He's starting one of the first 2 games. Like, we all know this. It's Greinke and Singer 1-2 in some order. He'll probably be able to go to 85, 80 to 85, which is, where most pitchers are first weekend. Like, I get the idea there. He is, though. Like, because he had been fairly stretched out before he left. And they are getting in bullpen work and backfield work when they have some time. Now, has that changed a bit out of pool play and changed a little bit now that we're in kind of these waning moments? Yeah. But I will tell anybody, do not be worried that Brady's going to only be able to go like 70 pitches his first start. No. Brady will be stretched out to probably about 85 to 90. And they'll pull the hook quicker because every team has been pulling hooks quicker nowadays. But I would be stunned if Brady can't, through pitch count alone, ignoring any other factors in his first regular season start, go at least 85 to 90. He'll be fine.
Coming up next, we're going to talk all things K-State hoops. So we will get to that and a fun little fact that I don't think many people realize. We're going to get to that coming up next. Coming up on Thursday, 4:30 tip-off, or 4:30 pregame coverage, 5:30 tip-off right here on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9. Throughout there, how big of a game this is for K-State, and if they can get to the Elite Eight, get to the Final Four, what would that mean? On the YouTube stream and on our comments section, Jason says, this reminds me of Coach Snyder starting something special. Tang is the only person who stopped the FKU chant. That's awesome in my mind. Can't wait to see where this goes. Then we got discussing about Marquise Noel and how Marquise Noel would be a 2-year player for Kansas State. And someone brought up how big of a, is he one of the biggest 2-year players in the, program's history? And I didn't have time to mention this, but Randy on our stream says this. Richmond was a 2-year player, so that shouldn't be a disqualifying factor for Marquise Noel. Mitch Richmond was awesome. Like, that dude was a certifiable bucket. That dude, I remember Mitch Richmond in the NBA. Like, that's how I remember Mitch Richmond more so than playing for Kansas State. But Mitch Richmond, yeah, his jersey's hanging in the rafters there. And that's where I think there is a chance that Marquise Noel, if things align and, legacies are cemented in March, legacies are there and end up in March. And that's why I brought up like Mario Chalmers, right? Like, that's his legacy. Like, if you look up Mario Chalmers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Mario Chalmers doesn't have any accolades as a season long for KU. He wasn't player of the year in the conference.
No.
I don't even think he was first team all conference.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He was really good. But the one thing that he did was he was the NCAA most outstanding player.
Yeah, and hit one of the biggest shots in KU history.
Yeah. I mean, like, he was defensive player of the year in 2007, co-defensive player of the year. So,
Nice.
You don't have to have the gaudy resume to be, to have that legacy. And Marquise Noel, third team all-American, played only 2 years. He's not going to be up there in points, is not going to be up there in any statistical category, for career for K-State. But man, if he's able to turn something around the way he did, and the way that Jerome Tang, when talking to Marquise Noel, basically goes, and the quote, I don't want to misquote, but he basically said, I got to do something to get him into the tournament. Like, he now put more pressure on me, Jerome Tang said, to do a better job because of what Marquise Noel was able to do. So I think this is a huge moment for the history for K-State basketball, as well as for Marquise Noel in this game. I really do. And I think this I don't know if there's a more fun player to watch in the rest of the NCAA tournament than somebody like Marquise Noel.
Yeah.
I think Marquise Noel means more to Kansas State than perhaps Jalen Wilson to KU. Even though he's first team consensus All-American and, I mean, his resume stacks up with anyone when it comes to single game seasons, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that this is also a fun fact when people like when you think Jalen Wilson, I don't think KU like great.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't. How many players under Bill Self have averaged 20 points per game?
Oh, that list is short. I know that list is short because when Frank did it, it was a tiny list. Oh man, maybe 5. I know Jalen and Frank have done it. I know those two. I don't think Oach averaged 20.
No.
I think Oach was like 18. I think Oach was close. I think it was 18 or 19.
And I'm talking single season here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, guys who have had a 20-point per game season. I know Frank and Jalen are the two most recent, but I feel like the number is tiny.
There we go. College. No, according to what I was, Oach did not. He averaged 18
Yeah, no.
point.
I thought Oach was like 18 or 19, so 18-8. Yeah. Oach was close.
According to at least what I saw and what I've looked up, 3.
So Frank, Jalen, and who else? Who am I forgetting?
I'm going to double check this because there's one name that
you want to make sure is being accurately represented?
Correct.
Fair.
Yes, he did. He averaged 20.3.
Okay.
You have an idea?
I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't. Because I felt there's a big gap between when Frank did it and probably this person did it. And I honestly couldn't tell you.
Played in Bill Self's first year.
I definitely couldn't tell you. My memory doesn't work that well back that far.
Well, you would have been.
Also that, because Bill Self's first year with KU was 04?
Yes.
Yeah, I was 8.
Wayne Simeon.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Averaged 20.3.
Yeah, I can't lie. My 8-year-old Fulton does not have a lot of great memories that have lasted this long.
That's understandable. It's understandable. But yeah, like if you think about it, only 3 guys have ever averaged 20 points per game. And Jalen Wilson is one of them.
Yeah.
You know? But when you say Jalen Wilson, you don't think, I think of other players who, are better. But he was damn good. I think he gets overlooked a little bit on that. But whereas for Kansas State, Marquise Noel's season this year, I mean, he averaged in Big 12 play, almost 20 points a game.
Yeah.
And that's why I look at this season for Kansas State as if they win Thursday and make it to the Elite 8, this goes down as one of the greatest seasons in the history of Kansas State basketball. And if they do, and we'll talk about it on Friday, because K-State plays 5:30 on Thursday. I mean, you'll get ready. All I know is this. I want K-State to win, but not in overtime.
Okay.
The reason why is if you play overtime on the Thursday or the Friday, the odds of you winning the next game are like 0.
Yeah.
Because you are just so spent for that extra basketball. I know that sounds so lame and stupid, but I remember the game in 2010 when K-State played Xavier and they had double OT and it just destroyed them. They had 0 legs in the game against Butler. None. So whatever happens, you got to do it during regulation. I will forever. That was the one thing that I remember, that and Pullen and Crawford going back and forth. And Shaheen Holloway, I believe it was. But then I remember the very next game and everybody talking about, because I thought K-State was going to beat Butler. I was like, Butler, they're going to beat Butler. But they just looked completely tired. Like it was a completely different team that played instead of playing against against Butler. Butler was so much more. They were fresh, ready to go, and you could tell there was a bit of a hangover there. So K-State just win the game Thursday in regulation. Win it 75-74.
Because you got Michigan. What do you want? What?
I just want them to win by 1.
Okay.
Just want them to win. Just win it 75, 74.
Okay.
No specific. I just that don't go to overtime.
Okay. You should want K-State to win like 72-50.
That would be awesome too. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
The other night, did you know this? Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Did you know it's on the 5th floor of the building?
Nope.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The 5th floor.
Interesting.
It's like a 9-story building.
Oh. Didn't know that.
When I went to New York, had to walk by it. Walked by Madison
Get
Square
it,
Garden.
Jake. You traveled. Have been to different places in the world. We get it.
Yeah. New York's fun. You should go to New York.
I will. It's on my list of cities I would really like
You
to
need
go
to
to.
go to New York.
I love to go to New York.
But walk by and, it's not like the Sprint Center. It's big. It's really big. And it's on the 5th floor. It's a little fun fact for those of you out there. Fun fact. Coming up next, we'll wrap things up with the mic drop. Coming up, we'll hear from Tom Izzo, Jerome Tang, tomorrow on this edition of Mic'd Up, as the KU or the K-State and the Michigan State players will meet with the media. We'll get to all of that coming up tomorrow here on Mic'd Up. Can't wait to hear what Marquise Noel, Naquan Tomlin, Ish Massoud have to say when they get to play in basically their I can't even imagine what they're going through right now.
I honestly can't either.
That's pretty sweet. It really, really is. Well, that's what we'll get to coming up tomorrow. Plus, we'll talk more Michigan State. Michigan State, this is why they're scary.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk more about the regular season and everything, but already, Fulton, what do you got for the mic drop?
War Baseball Classic Finals tonight between USA and Japan, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere with some great players, including some on the Japanese side that you will not get to see for like another 3 years, both for the WBC and for them to come stateside. If you like baseball at all, or just are a fan of a good atmosphere, put the game on tonight. It will be a thoroughly enjoyable affair. I would just recommend to you, you're going to just see something amazing happen tonight. So please do like I do and enjoy some great baseball tonight.
The Kansas City Chiefs decided to sign Derrick, and I think that's a good depth signing. It really, really is. Last thing I'll get to, best of luck to the Butler County Grizzlies. They're in the national tournament for the JUCO tournament. They play later tonight. Best of luck to the Grizzlies. Coming up next, we've got 580 Sports Talk.
The inventor of Navage nasal care